Well, there's plenty happening in the world of hockey. There's also plenty happening in the world of television, and who better to discuss those matters than the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast. Welcome back to John Shannon here on Sekeres and Price. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great, boys. How are you?
Yeah, very, very well. First things first, we'll start with the Canucks. It's our bread and butter out here. And I think a lot of people are very excited to hear that Ray Ferraro is going to be joining the regional broadcast here, the best in the business, if you ask me, on as a color analyst. And you sort of have an idea of the details and the breakdowns of how many games Ray's going to work here and what they've got to do to backfill on these other games.
Well, first of all, I think you have to work on the premise that if John Garrett was leaving, you had better go with someone with a ton of credibility and a ton of expertise that people wouldn't yearn for Cheech on a weekly basis. And if you can go with Ray Ferraro, then you've done that. I mean, they both have great followings. They both have great analysis. They understand the market very well. So my understanding of it is that Ray's strength of this new deal is it's 25 home games to begin with, and then potentially 10 more on the road. I would assume that would reflect around his ESPN schedule. So if the Canucks are on the East Coast and he's doing a Thursday game at Madison Square Garden and the Canucks are Tuesday at TD Garden in Boston, it might make some sense for him to do that. But the cornerstone of the deal for Ray, my understanding is that it's all those home games, and you don't have to go to the airport one more time, and you don't have to get the Nexus card out. You get to go down and park in the basement and take the elevator up to the broadcast booth.
Have you heard any names with regards to who's going to pick up what's left of the regional schedule?
No, that's a really good question. I mean, there's depending on that wild card 10. I mean, there could be 20 to 25 games that would require a color man for, and you'd have to think that the Canucks, who have been aggressive obviously with Ray and getting Ray to sign on the dotted line, that they're taking a lot of time to find somebody else that would be of that same quality, because that's the importance. Quite frankly, that's the importance of a good regional broadcast at a time when the team is trying to rebuild. You need some credibility. That's what John and John have done for so long for the Vancouver Canucks. Yep. And now it's going to be John and Ray, and John in fill in the blank.
We said it. Sorry, Jeff. We said it a lot, boy, this last decade, and how it could have gone if there wasn't such a cozy broadcast on the home side with John.
Really, just as an aside, though. They did for the most part, they did the Florida-Boston series this year.
They did.
And I think it opened a lot of eyes and ears to the quality of the broadcasters they are. And I would not be surprised to see John Shorthouse get a ton more national work based on how he managed that Florida-Boston series. He did a marvelous job, and I think a lot of people in the hockey world, I think a lot of people at Rogers said, whoa, he's pretty good without the Canucks. We should be plugging him somewhere else every once in a while. Now, I think a lot of us have known that for a long time. But you know what happens when those airwaves go over the Rockies, they just seem to dissipate.
Yeah. No, and if I can stump for our town here and for John, it's about time. John has been top quality for, 20 years here, so delighted to hear that. Just lastly, just because it's a name Canucks fans really love and are really excited about because he does such an amazing job on the panel, do you think there's any chance that Ken Bieksa slides in this chair next year and helps out with some of those 25 games?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have not heard that. Kevin's been up to his eyeballs with the Stanley Cup playoffs for Sportsnet, so that would not surprise me. Mind you, doing color, sitting in the broadcast booth, instant analysis is much different than being on a panel and taking 20 to 25 minutes to decide what you're going to say. So perhaps it's something Kevin aspires to, or perhaps it isn't.
John, we all came up through the Canadian model, and you certainly were at the forefront in terms of hiring. It was always a play-by-play guy and his sidekick. The American model has been a little bit more of rotating people through and different crews doing different games of playoff series and those types of things. Do you think we're at a point in time on this side of the border now where the network is open to, it sounds like they're going to have no choice here, but is the network more open to, 25 for Ray, 10 for somebody else, 10 for another person? You said color man, and yet I saw somewhere where Jen Botterill's name was thrown into the mix. Like, maybe she gets an opportunity. Are we at that point now here in Canada where that's more of a legitimate option?
I think it's more of a legitimate option, Jeff, because the pool of people is not that deep. We're going through a cycle now where retired players, this was a given. I remember walking out of 15 or 20 arenas at the end of seasons and I had to have a tap on the shoulder from a guy that said, "Hey, John, I'm retiring. Can I get a job?" Well, that doesn't happen anymore because they don't need the money. In order to do this job properly, and I don't have to tell you two guys, in order to do this job properly, it's not just showing up an hour before the game and putting the headset on and talking. It's work. It's watching a lot of hockey. It's making a lot of notes. It's talking. It's going in the visiting dressing room. A lot of people think that's the dark side when they've played for a single team. There's a lot of people that get tried out and just go by the wayside saying, "I can't cope with it." But I think right now, as it looks like I think if the Canucks could get Ray for 58 games, I think they'd be thrilled to get Ray for 58 games, but it just doesn't make sense. You have to fill the gap somehow, and so I think that at this point it's a necessity as opposed to the way things are going to happen. I just think they would probably like to have one guy, but it just can't work out right now with schedules.
What does a Vegas-Florida final on television do on either side of the border?
Has it started yet? I am a little... I know why it hasn't started, but boy, oh boy, what a gap. It's too bad. I don't feel for the Florida Panthers. They've been able to bask in the glory of their 3 playoff series victories. But boy, this is a long time to wait for the start of a series. And the following in Florida, the following in Nevada will be tremendous. The people will be excited there. It will take some time for other markets to get excited. Our country will take 3 to 4 games before they actually start to pay attention again. It doesn't help that there are 2 days off between some of the games as well. It's different. We're so used to a game every second day. But this is obviously done for our friends at TNT in order to maintain their schedule. They don't want to conflict with the NBA. NBA has the same schedule. I remember for years, guys, when I was running Hockey Night, we would say, well, at least we won't do what basketball does, and that's, play 2 days, have 2 days off between games. We were every second day. There was a good rhythm. It was 2 weeks. That's going to happen. But we know now, right? I think if it goes 7, it goes to the 19th of June. And boy, that's a long time. That's a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Before the series gets going, we're usually, I don't want to say privy to, but granted an audience with Gary Bettman. He usually holds his State of the National Hockey League address. This really would be the first time that he is in front of hockey media after the Arizona debacle, the vote there in Tempe. What do you think of the tone and tenor, and what do you think the commission is going to face here when he meets the media?
Well, I mean, Gary will obviously have an answer because he always has an answer to everything. What I would say is that before the Arizona question, I think there'll be a lot more questions about Ottawa. What's going on in Ottawa? How quickly will Ottawa be resolved? Why isn't Ottawa resolved now? We know they're down to 4 groups. We know that they've got binding offers in, but why isn't it done yet? It should have been done by now. I think we all have theories on why it's not done, but and then the Arizona question is out there. We had him on our show 2 weeks before the vote, and I said, "What if they don't win?" And he says, "I can't do it. I can't answer that. I don't want to answer that." So I think that there was some great concern. What he will say, I guarantee you, Jeff, is that, well, we know they're playing there for another year. And then we'll see. Gary's very good at putting things off and delaying, and he will be buying himself some time in order to either have an answer for a new arena, a new owner, or a new city.
Gregor mentioned to us yesterday he thought that Gary would allow, even if it is very sort of faint, very non-committal, that he would in some way acknowledge that we're running out of runway in Phoenix and that there's the possibility for a relocation down the road. Do you concur?
I don't think he will say that specifically, but he will say that we're going to be at Mullen Arena for one more year. After that, I can't promise you anything, which will be his way of saying, whoa. And then invariably there will be somebody from TVA in Quebec City that will put their hand up at the back and say, when will you consider Quebec City? Because the Quebec City question, do you remember, Matty, you're a longtime CFL guy. There was a great tradition at the coaches' press conference, and Shaky Hunt used to ask the question, will you allow your players to have sex before the game? And it became part of the tradition. Well, part of the tradition of Gary's press conference now is, somebody from the province of Quebec, God bless them, saying, when will you allow Quebec City back into the National Hockey League?
Best answer on that one was Pinball Clemens 20 years ago. He said, hey, do whatever got you here. Don't change your routine at this point. It's funny because, look, Coyotes obviously a problem here. Ottawa, I know they really want $1 billion, but it's a small market Canadian. Yeah, I mean, if the Ottawa Senators are worth $1 billion, every team in the Big Four is worth $1 billion. And then, John, if we can bring it back to your business by trade here, a headline on ESPN yesterday, the day that rocked baseball, with Major League Baseball having to take over the regional rights of the San Diego Padres from that Diamond Sports Group, which is going through bankruptcy proceedings. Baseball may have to take over the regional rights of 4 more teams by the end of this season. And, of course, this Diamond Sports Group does business with a dozen or so NHL teams and NBA teams, and those decisions are going to come later in the fall. Is the streaming reckoning upon us here, and is the NHL well equipped for the shifting media environment that could really cause some problems for hockey-related revenues here in the near term?
Well, first of all, baseball is, of the 4 major sports, in my opinion, baseball is the most tech savvy of the 4 of them.
Oh,
I think,
by far.
I think they have actually, because they're going to get a lot of their money from Diamond Sports. They could get up to 80% of their rights fees and still take control of the rights. I think baseball's really been looking forward to this in order to try to build on their MLB network concept and their streaming services. So, they've hired staff already. They've hired production people already. They've been preparing for this for 4 or 5 months. This is not a surprise to them. Hockey got most of the money out of Sinclair because they only pay through the end of the regular season and the first round of the playoffs. And then there's the other 2, Pittsburgh and Las Vegas, who were working with Discovery and AT&T, and they went bankrupt too. Now, I think what we've seen in Vegas, they've just signed a 3-year deal with an over-the-air group under the Scripps banner, with the intent of putting their games back on over-the-air television for 3 more years, with the possibility of creating a streaming service on top of that. I think we're in the phase right now, Matt, of Back to the Future. I also think that there's going to be a way that the regional sports networks will exist in most of those markets. Whether the rights fees are the same is another question for a lot of people, but I think we're in an evolution now where teams are having to think outside the box, whether it be over-the-top streaming, whether it be regular over-the-air television where you sell commercials. Vegas did very well financially with this deal that they got from Scripps. They're not 100% whole, but they're more than 90% whole of what they had, and they have potential for the future. So I think we're probably in a a 3 to 5 year window of figuring out where things are going. I also wouldn't underestimate with what we're seeing with ESPN and what's happening with ESPN and their direct-to-home system of that they try to take a ton of the regional rights and pluck them and put them on some of their over-the-top services as well. So the games are all going to get televised. Viewers, if they want to watch them, will be able to watch them. It's how they watch them and how the signal gets into your house that's going to change. But by the way, that doesn't appear to be the same thing in our country. We seem to be pretty traditional with TV and TV rights. I mean, look at the Canucks have just signed that 10-year deal, that new 10-year deal that everybody seems to be very happy with on both sides. So in the end, the games are going to get televised. We're going to be able to watch them. And I do think there will be a flattening of revenues for a couple of years as we morph into a new, more technological age.
Yeah, Sinclair, the parent there of the Diamond Group, and it's funny you say the baseball's been preparing for this for months, so much so that they've signed up 4 different cable providers in San Diego to put Padres games on as soon as today. Right. So they were quite ready for it.
The great thing is, Matt, like they've been working with cable operators for years. This is nothing new for them. MLB Network is the most successful of all the league-owned sports networks. They've done it. It's a magical network. They do a marvelous job. And this is just
have a digital business, John. Like people go to Major League Baseball to help them on the digital side, whether they're sports operations or not.
That's right. So. Well, in fact, in many ways, it has been the lifeblood of why franchises have been able to make so much money. Is Baseball Advanced Media, which now they're partnering with Disney, right? So it's a fascinating study in how baseball, as much as we think it's an old sport, an old person sport, they've been ahead of the curve on so many different levels.
All right, quickly, who wins the Cup?
Oh, I think Vegas does, and I think I would not be surprised to see Vegas win it in less than 6. I just think that they're deeper. You know, when you play a team only twice a year, you don't get a sense of their depth. I think that Vegas is bigger. I think it's faster. And to me, the key to it, you know, we laugh in Toronto about the core 4 and all this. Well, you look at that defense for the Golden Knights, and I have to tell Canuck fans about the Golden Knights defense. When Pietrangelo, Martinez, and Theodore, and Whitecloud, and McNabb, oh my goodness gracious, they're big. And they are cantankerous, and they can move the puck.
You know, John Shannon loves the Stanley Cup playoffs as much as anyone I know loves the Stanley Cup playoffs. So when he says a short series and let's not go till June 19th, you know your season has gone on too damn long.
It's been a long season, Matty. It has been a long
especially
season.
Here in Vancouver. Jeff can attest. John, marvelous stuff. Thank you for this, my man. We'll catch up very soon.
Cheers, boys.